This is the
Five Stars
podcast.
Let me talk to you.
Hi.
So, what do you guys want to talk about? Tell me when I'm telling lies.
Thanks, guys. Back to you.
Ask me if I ordered the microphone. I've been busy. Get off my back. This is a multi-layer process, man. It's a 4 years in the making kind of project. It really just kind of boils down to how sick I get of having to talk over this air conditioning unit. No, I've got other issues to deal with right now. Like short-circuiting GFCI units. I've done just about all the troubleshooting I can do. I do not claim to be an electrician. I've done 12-volt wiring for pipe organs, but that is as far as I'm willing to go when it comes to touching electrical units. So, just trying to cope with not having a functioning kitchen for the past couple days. No biggie. Again, just to remind everybody, I'm paying a little over $1,000 a month to live in this place. So far, I've had 3 maintenance issues, and I haven't even been here a month. Is that an omen for what's to come over the next 13 months? Probably. But it still beats having to commute over an hour both ways to work. A lot of gas, a lot of mileage rack up. Traffic's usually not an issue, but I'm kind of over it. But I know you all don't care about the personal stuff. It's really just my one opportunity to come on here and publicly vent about stuff. What I need to do is save the venting for Retro Raw. Don't want to peak too soon. It is the 5 Starr Wrestling Report podcast. The wrestling podcast nobody knows but everyone needs. Welcome to the Monday show. We are finally going to get back to a normal Friday schedule this coming week. It's funny too, when I recorded the audio for Monday last week, I did not know at the time that I was going to be needed for an out-of-town service job in Kentucky. So even if I was planning to do a Friday show the other week, I probably still would have had to cancel because of the job. But it looks like we're in the clear here. So make sure you subscribe, comment, and like the show for me. Trying to keep the podcast going strong, despite the hectic schedule. I like being busy, but it's not always easy when you still have to find time to fit in the hobbies and try to balance that with the personal life. It's a good thing I'm actively remaining single. Just following the trend of the ongoing depopulation of society. Don't mind me. Just trying to follow orders of the man. Anyway, what do you say we dive into Retro Raw and avoid wherever the heck that conversation was about to go? It's not a conspiracy theory, but this is definitely not a podcast about ongoing societal issues. Now we're here to get away from all that nonsense. Try to find joy in wherever we can find it with classic wrestling. So let's do it. And I'm hoping because I got to watch this episode of Raw a day earlier, it'll give me more of a window to try to fit in the other classic shows for next Friday. Still got a pretty booked weekend. It's going to be tough. Luckily, there wasn't a whole lot to say about this week's Raw, which is both a good and a bad thing. It's good because it gave me left stuff to bitch about. By that same token, it's bad because, well, now I have less stuff to bitch about. Therefore, the entertainment value is going to take a bit of a hit. But I'll try to keep it engaging. So, last we left things, well, we actually had a couple big takeaways from last week's Slobber Knocker. Not the least of which was the debut of the fake Razor. That and Jim Ross's completely pointless heel turn that involved a work shoot on the company. Thanks, Russo. Now, one might think that with JR going out there on public television and essentially lambasting the company and the owner for mismanagement and terrible leadership, one might think there would be some proper punishment for that, right? Perhaps JR would be suspended without pay. God forbid, removed from the commentary position. Something to that extent. Well, no. You would be wrong. JR's punishment for bearing both the owner and the promotion he works for was by allowing him to remain in the commentary position. Just calling the action like nothing ever happened the previous week. Did I ever mention how stupid the whole Jim Ross heel turn was? Such a boneheaded move. Made even worse by the fact that he's just out there a week later all chipper and normal, like none of that heel shit the previous week ever occurred. Trust me, it won't be the last time we see nonsensical crap like that on WWF television over the next how many years. And I'm not just talking about all the dumbass booking during the Attitude Era. So we began with Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Jake the Drunk Roberts. The two men that were the finalists of the 1996 King of the Ring tournament back in June of this year. Did the commentators bother to mention that little detail during any part of the match? You do the math. They couldn't bother to mention that little factoid. But we did get Lawler doing his usual Jake's an alcoholic wisecracks through the entire god-blessed thing. It would help to alleviate those criticisms if we didn't have to look at Jake's giant beer gut the whole time. I know Lawler's a heel. It's supposed to be a way for him to get heat on himself. Hard to disagree with the bad guy when you can visibly see that he's right. Just saying. So Austin and Jake had an absolutely wretched television match. To say the whole thing happened at a snail's pace would be an insult to snails. They're just out there going through the motions. To be honest, it was probably the best Jake could do given his physical state around this time. Most definitely you could tell that Austin was going at less than 50%. They get to the deal at the end where Austin tries to pin Jake with his feet on the ropes, but the ref catches him. So as he and Austin are jaw-jacking, King's over in the corner with a bottle of Jim Beam trying to get Jake's attention. And I don't even remember what the hell happened here. All I know is he spat the alcohol in Jake's face, and then he just nonchalantly sauntered over so Austin could hit him with the stunner and pin him. All of this to promote, by the way, a pay-per-view match for the In Your House event in October. It is Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Savio Vega. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Savio Vega, you say? Have we gone back in a time machine several months? Have we not seen this fucking match 100 goddamn times in the last 3 months alone? Why do we need to see this again? When's the last time Savio and Austin were even in the same room together? They had a Caribbean strap match in back-to-back nights over the summer after that In Your House debacle in South Carolina. I presume that given Savio won the match, one would think that would be the blow-off. Savio is currently feuding with the fake Razor. Austin's been cutting promos on Bret Hart for weeks. How exactly do we circle back to needing to see another fucking Austin-Savio match? It's literally the same rant I did about Taker versus Goldust. We've seen it. A lot. I do not need to see the 58th chapter of the overextended Austin-Savio feud. Sorry to break it to you. It was never anything to write home about in the first place. I get they needed to give Austin a pay-per-view win, but I guess it's fine. He's sort of a pet project for the future of the company in a year or two, if you didn't know that. Could be worse. They could be having Austin feud with one of the hog farmers. That would most definitely be worse than a feud with Savio Vega. Before I briefly gloss over the next match, I did have to mention Hunter Hearst Helmsley's 30-second promo. Here's everything that happened. He challenged Mr. Perfect to a fight, and then he walked over to do commentary for the Hog Farmers match. I'm not shitting you. That is precisely what happened. Mr. Perfect, if you've got any guts, you'll come down to the ring right now and show me how perfect you really are. Immediately plays the hillbilly music. Then Hunter just walked over to the commentary desk with moop face. And boy, he picked a hell of a match to come out to commentate on. The Hog Farmers versus the Grimm Brothers, who I believe are the Harris twins, if I'm not mistaken. AKA the Blues Brothers, if you remember back to last year when they had full heads of hair. Ron and Don Harris, the two interchangeable brothers who had more gimmickry packages and Big Show had face and heel turns. And I know I've talked about them before, but Ron and Don Harris, the Blue Brothers, Harris twins, whatever you want to call them, they fucking sucked. They were absolutely horrible professional wrestlers. Sorry, Jim. I know you booked him in Smoky Mountain a handful of times. They were no good. I'm sure they were nice guys. Probably very classy employees. bad wrestlers. Unsurprisingly, the match was also bad. We've now reached the point with the hog farmers where they're actually bringing out livestock to ringside for their matches. We had Phineas carrying out a baby goat with him. Or maybe it was a mule. Whatever, I don't really give a shit what it was. The only thing I know is that they went to a split screen midway through this horrible match. Here's what we learned. Mr. Perfect has not only accepted Hunter's challenge to a fight, but he, the babyface Mr. Perfect, is giving Hunter, the supposed heel, 2 weeks' notice to prepare for this fight. So let me get this straight. The heel came out on television this week and made an open challenge to the babyface. And so the babyface responds by saying, "Sure, I'll fight you, but not tonight. It'll be in 2 weeks." Isn't that sort of a heelish thing to do? To tell your opponent that you are going to willingly forestall the fight and make him wait? You know, if I didn't know any better, it's almost as if this Mr. Perfect babyface run is a giant ruse, and we're all being steered in the wrong direction. It's either that or he's the worst fucking babyface in all of recorded history. Question is, who do you give the benefit of the doubt to? Logical WWF booking or pure coincidence? So anyway, that hideous TV match we were mentioning a minute ago, Phineas pinned one of the Harris twins with a shitty slop drop. That's all I cared to note about it. But in more important news, another one of the big takeaways from last week's fine episode of Sports Entertainment Wrestling. It's time to unveil who the real Double J is. Took a full year to uncover the mystery, but we now know that Jeff Jarrett is nothing more than a fraud, a charlatan, scam artist, a hoodwinker, and worst of all, a lip syncer. By the way, I just did that totally off the cuff with no preparation. I'm proud of myself. Solid improv. And after going over the timeline of the Road Dogg Jeff Jarrett story from the summer of last year, we now come to learn that the roadie, real name Jesse James, he is the man behind Jarrett's #1 hit With My Baby Tonight. He shot the original music video. He did the singing. Everything we saw with Jarrett on camera was a complete and utter scam. So in WWF's continual efforts to dogpile on Jarrett after all the fallout between him and Vince, they're now trying to claim that Jesse James is the original Double J. The real Double J. And, well, now y'all know the backstory as to how the Road Dogg Jesse James become a megastar in the next few years. It all started here with the WWF trying to whitewash Jeff Jarrett. Unfortunately for Jesse, the babyface singles run did not amount to much of anything. But we'll talk about that more as we recap his upcoming TV segments. So that brought us to the fake Razor versus Savio. And, Well, there are many things we can say about Rick Bogner in the WWF. Probably the most subtle of those insults would be referring to him as fake, which is what the fans were chanting at him here. All things considered, he should consider that a blessing. At the point Jim Ross tried to insinuate to Gorilla Monsoon that he was denying Rick's great athleticism, Gorilla Monsoon with a straight face goes, "I'm not insinuating that at all, Jim." My immediate response was me looking deadpan at my monitor and saying, "I am. Rick Bogner was fucking awful." Let me stress here that 1 week ago, I think I mentioned that I really didn't recall much of the fake Razor run in the WWF. I tried to block out as much of that as humanly possible because it was so terrible. Now that I've gone back and seen a Rick Bogner match again years later, I'm reminded as to why I blocked him out. He was god fucking awful. There was a spot here in the opening few minutes where he's got Savio trapped in the corner, and he's trying to throw those open hand palm slaps that Scott Hall used to do, which, by the way, never looked all that great to begin with. But Scott was a naturally good worker, so he made them look convincing. Rick Bogner was not Scott Hall. And these open hand palm strikes did not work at all. They were laughably bad. So bad that I'm shocked nobody in the crowd started audibly cackling at him. He's out there doing the world's most lumbering big guy offense. Looks like a fucking uncle with a dad bod doing a Razor parody at his son's birthday party. Poor Savio was desperately trying to get anything out of the guy, but the whole thing is failing. And just when he thought it couldn't get any more lackluster and turn the channel heat bad, out comes fucking Glenn Jacobs in the fake Diesel outfit for the DQ. After we literally just sat through the world's worst TV match for the last 10 minutes. DQ finish on a Diesel run-in. They couldn't even put over the fake Razor in his first televised appearance. The only thing he got to do was hit Savio with a sloppy-looking Razor's Edge. The thing I always love going back to and listening is hearing Jim Cornette talk about the process of how he trained Rick and Glenn for these roles. Basically showing them tapes of Scott Hall and Kevin Nash and then realizing that Nash had like 5 moves, if you count the hair flip. So teaching Glenn how to be Diesel was a walk in the park. Problem was that Glenn was 10 times the worker that Bogner ever was. So if anybody should have been given the 5 moves of doom to work with, should have been Bogner. Could have masked him a lot better in the ring by having him do less. I don't know what else to say. What else is there to say? It's fake Razor and fake Diesel in the WWF. Shit was awful. Everybody knew it was. Up to and including the people calling the fucking show every week. I know JR had to try his best to put this over, but you know he was biting his tongue having to call this. And again, you wonder why the WWF was getting their asses smoked in the ratings war throughout this period. The fact that it wasn't even close. I mean, I stopped doing the Nitro to Raw TV ratings comparisons because at this point it's a lost cause. watch the show. It's no wonder the WWF was getting their asses handed to them. Like, what moron is going to sit there and blindly and eagerly watch this crap when Nitro's got the NWO running roughshod over all the top baby faces? Meanwhile, Hogan's reinvented himself with an iconic heel run that became the center of the wrestling news bubble. WCW was hot shit. They were the popular brand. And all the while, the WWF was just doubling down and reverting back to all the bad habits and made the product entirely unwatchable for the last 3 or 4 years. And it was a different audience coming into the picture during this time. For better or worse, we can certainly have that discussion, but it doesn't really pertain to the conversation at the moment. But one company was listening to that audience and giving them a hot product worth seeing every week. Meanwhile, Vince insisted on going backwards instead of trying to adapt with the changing times. Just keep hammering home the bad gimmicks and the cartoonish programming. It's no wonder they were losing. And remember too, especially around this time, there were a lot of people that were sure that the WWF was going to go out of business. That the popularity of WCW was rising so much that they really could have put Vince under. Never forget that. They were financially struggling here. It was bad. We don't even conceive of anything possible like that happening today, but in 1996, they were on the cusp. Staying on the topic of giving people reasons to turn the channel to watch Nitro, the TV main event this week did a fine job giving people that motivation. I even remember them announcing this the other week, and I was still awestruck when I actually saw them go through with it. It is actually, I can't even call it a mixed tag because we didn't have two genders involved here. The match is Shawn Michaels and Jose Lothario versus Vader and Jim Cornette. And I presume that given the nature of the talent involved, it was supposed to be one of those situations where only the managers could wrestle each other, but the actual trained wrestlers couldn't touch the managers. Again, that was my thought process going in. I think that considering how things went down between Vader and Shawn at SummerSlam, the action would have looked a lot more believable seeing Vader work with Lothario instead. At least he could have laid shit in with Jose. Or better yet, wouldn't have been afraid to. You could still tell that Vader was hesitant to do anything physical with Shawn. He was on pins and needles the entire time. To be fair, Shawn was at least a little more cooperative here than he was in Cleveland. And I will concede, the match picked up during the closing few minutes, so it wasn't a rotten TV main event. First 2/3 was mostly Vader working over Shawn for the heat. I still, for the life of me, have no earthly idea why the hell the managers were involved here. The extent to their involvement was JC coming in for all of 20 seconds before tagging back out to Vader. And then Vader teased that he was about to kill Jose with a lariat until Jose just tagged Shawn back in. Then Shawn made a babyface comeback on Vader. There was some back and forth between them at the finish after Shawn was teasing a sweet chin in the corner. But then Cornette ran in with a tennis racket to run a distraction. And this part was actually funny. Vader hit Shawn with a standing powerbomb. And of course, he's taking like 5 minutes to capitalize now that he has Shawn in a pinning predicament. So Lawler's on commentary practically begging for Vader to just pin the fucking guy while he's down. And I'm sitting there like, dude's got a point, man. He's down. Just pin his shoulders. And there was a spot earlier when Vader was teasing a Vader bomb on Shawn, but he's just stalling on the middle rope for like a week and a half. I think he was actually teasing the moonsault, and then for whatever reason he just got back on the middle rope and went for the Vader bomb. Of course he missed. So after Vader hit the power bomb, he drags Shawn over to the corner, gets him in position for the Vader bomb, and well, he hits it. He goes for the cover. The ref counts 1. He counts 2. And he counts 3. And I'm sitting there like, huh. Well, that's strange. Vader just pinned Shawn Michaels clean in the middle of the ring with his move. I saw it. And I'm looking at the video screen like, am I watching the wrong episode? Is this a show from like mid-July that I accidentally clicked on? No, turns out this was the September 30th, 1996 episode of Monday Night Raw, where Vader pinned Shawn for the second time, basically clean as a sheet. Which continues to drive home my conspiracy theory that even by this point post-SummerSlam, they were still convinced on doing a rematch with Shawn and Vader for the title. And the only reason I now believe that to be the case is, why would you have Vader pin Shawn in a TV match if the plan wasn't to eventually book them in a rematch down the road? Well, turns out we'll never know the answer because we never got a pay-per-view rematch for the title. Instead, what we had was a 30-second Crash TV ending where Psycho Sid tried to run out to go after Vader, and for some peculiar reason, outran Goldust. We were then informed, mid-run-in, that Goldust was wrestling Sid next week on Raw for some discernible reason. And then all 4 guys had a brawl to close out the show. Well, that was odd. I'm all for chaotic endings to run out the clock, but this one seemed a little haphazardly thrown together. I did kind of chuckle as Sid realized that he was about to have to try to fight off both heels by himself. You can audibly see him mouth the words, "Get up, Shawn! Get up!" And Shawn had to spring to his feet to cut off Goldust at the last minute. It's just a bizarre situation when you realize what happens at Survivor Series. Okay, but here's the other thing that just occurred to me. So we know it's Sid versus Shawn in Survivor Series. We know that Vader versus Shawn 2 never happened because, well, Shawn gonna Shawn in 1996. Getting his panties in a bunch about having to work with a guy that's stiffer than him. Does that mean the WWF title match for In Your House in October is Shawn versus Goldust? If so, I do not remember that match ever happening. Now, frankly, the only thing I really do remember about that show is the Undertaker-Mankind Buried Alive match. The rest of that show may as well have happened in a vacuum somewhere. But that's presumably the only other mathematical equation I can think of. Unless Shawn just didn't work the pay-per-view, which is also possible. Or maybe it was a tag match. Whatever, I can look it up sometime next week. Not going to do that now, because I've got other stuff I need to attend to, such as editing. So we're going to get this baby uploaded, and we will reconvene on Friday for an actual Friday podcast. So look forward to that. And we do have 3 different segments, so that's also good news. Folks, always want to thank everybody that comes back to check out the show every week. And that's all I got. Catch you on Friday. Take care. Peace out.